there, my name is Megan and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be doing the info dump book tag. I was tagged by Ramsey over at Rajathon, so I will go ahead and link his channel down below so you can check him out. He's got a lot of great content. It's really hard to explain what this tag is about, but it's kind of like your reading tastes and what you like in your writing and things like that. So I'm just going to go ahead and get on into the questions. Question number 1 is, how many books do you read on average per month? In 2020, my goal is 5. I did scale that back quite a bit from 2019 because I got really burned out in 2019. I was reading 8 to 10 per month last year and it was just a little too much. So my goal is 5 and I have been pretty consistent with that so far this year. Question number 2 are, how many books are on your TBR? So I wasn't really sure how to answer this question. If I'm talking about just my physical TBR, the books that I physically own, it's probably 100 to 200. I have never actually inventoried it. And if you guys want me to go through and do a video series where I inventory based on genre, the different unread books I have on my shelf and what's on my TBR, I'd be happy to do that. But I've honestly never done it myself, but I can easily say it's probably a couple hundred. Question number 3 is, how are your bookshelves organized? I feel like I probably have my bookshelves organized in the weirdest way possible, but I'm going to go through it. So I have mine separated into young adult, science fiction, fantasy, and dystopian, adult science fiction, fantasy, and dystopian, adult and YA contemporary, adult and YA historical fiction, classics, nonfiction, and then children's books or like children's chapter books. So I have my main bookcases and then I have kind of a bookcase on the wall, and I'm going to show you guys that attaches to the wall, and that's what I have my children's books on. And then I have a smaller bookcase that my dad built for me when I was a kid that I keep my nonfiction on. And in one of my videos I talked about how I have the Billy bookshelves from IKEA and one of them broke. That was the bookshelf that I had all of my classics and some of my overflow fantasy on. And it wasn't anything that was wrong with the bookshelf. We broke it. So I'm waiting for IKEA to open back up because they're still closed last time I checked because of COVID-19, so I can buy a new one. So all of those books are currently like stacked over here, but I'm going to show you at least what I have on my bookshelves and how I organize them. Okay, so here are the young adult science fiction, fantasy, and dystopian shelves I have. So I have a small bookshelf here, and then I have a larger bookshelf here. And then the middle bookshelf here, I have some overflow YA, dystopian, fantasy, and sci-fi. And then it goes into my adult, starting with Joe Abercrombie. I do try to keep everything alphabetically organized by author last name, but I do also like to keep series together. So sometimes I do move books around just to make sure that the series are together because I'm kind of weird like that. So here is my adult shelf, science fiction, fantasy. And like I said, I did have another bookshelf that went right here. So I'm kind of going to show you guys where that is. All right. So say hello to Tyler. Just ignore him. Woo. Yeah, I do have 3 cats. You'll see them. This is the little wall shelf I was talking about. So this I keep my children's chapter books on. Some of these I've had since I was like a kid. And then all the way at the bottom, I do have a couple advanced reader copies that I haven't gotten to yet. And then moving on over here, I have my nonfiction shelf, and then I do have some overflow like Shakespeare because I do have an entire Shakespeare anthology, but these are ones that I've had probably since like high school, and then 2 fantasy books that I just didn't want on my main shelf but that I don't want to get rid of. And then I have some Christian nonfiction, and then goes into Christian fiction. Excuse me, that's backwards. Christian fiction and then a lot more Christian nonfiction because I enjoy reading that. And then some Bibles, and then we have some historical fiction. Down at the bottom, we have some science nonfiction. And then Azurite, Bloodstone, and The Power of a Poured Out Soul. Those are my self-published books. And then some miscellaneous at the bottom here. These are some classics that were on the shelf that broke. So that's where they are right now. And then the other books are over here on the desk. So these are my overflow fantasy that goes on that broken bookshelf, my historical fiction, my anthologies or leather-bound classics, some more fantasy, and my contemporary in the back. And if you're wondering what all these books are, I know this is probably so boring. These are a lot of my college textbooks from when I was in college, obviously, and then some just overflow books of when I got my teaching license. So yeah, that is it. That is my way that I organize my bookshelves. So hopefully when I get my bookshelf fixed, I will go ahead and give you guys a bookshelf tour if you're interested. Question 4 is, what genres do you read the most of? I read mostly fantasy, adult, and YA, and I also read science fiction, adult, and YA. Less genres I read are contemporary and historical fiction, and then I'm trying to get into thriller. And then I know that classics aren't a genre, but I do enjoy classics as well. Question 5 is, which genre do you own the most of? That is definitely fantasy because it's the genre that I read the most. Question 6 is, what is your preferred form of reading? I enjoy physical books. I am not a fan of ebooks because I read on my phone and it just hurts my eyes, and I like having the physical book in my hand. I like the way that they feel. I like the way that the paper smells. So I really enjoy physical books, plus I like collecting them. Question number 7 is your most owned author, and when I was preparing for this video, I really thought it was interesting when I was looking through my shelves to see what my most owned authors were. So I counted for authors that I own 6 or more books of, so I'm going to tell you which authors I own 6 or more of their books. So coming in at number 1 is Cassandra Clare. I own 15 Cassandra Clare books, which was really surprising to me because I never thought that I would be a Cassandra Clare lover, but I'm just going to admit it. I love the Shadowhunter books. I'm just going to put it out there. I'm a grown woman and I love the Shadowhunter books. So I own 15 of her books. Coming in at number 2 is Brandon Sanderson. I own 12 Brandon Sanderson books. He is near and dear to my heart. Coming in at number 3 is Robin Hobb. She is definitely an author I want to read more of. I own 3 of her fantasy trilogies, but I've only read 1. So definitely an author that I need to delve into her work more. And then I have a 3-way tie for authors. I own 8 of their books, and that would be Holly Black, Brent Weeks, and Victoria/B.E. Schwab. And then finally, I have the authors who I own 6 or more of their books, and I also have another 3-way tie, and that is Leigh Bardugo, Joe Abercrombie, and Kendar Blake. So obviously, those are authors that I really enjoy their work, or I wouldn't own so many of their books. Question number 8 is, what is your favorite writing style? I personally like really descriptive writing style with a lot of imagery because it helps me to visualize things in my head. And because I read so much fantasy and science fiction and these worlds are completely fabricated from the author's imagination, I need those details in order for the picture to be painted in my mind, which is a lot different than like a contemporary that takes place in our world. So I really like lush descriptions as long as it's not overly descriptive. I'm thinking of like Scott Lynch for some reason. I mean, I love Scott Lynch. The Lies of Locke Lamora is my favorite book, one of my favorite books of all time, but he does get a little bit overly descriptive. Same thing with Tolkien when he's talking about, you know, the landscape. However, that does help me to really become immersed in the world. So it's like a double-edged sword, but I do like really descriptive writing with a lot of imagery. Question 9 is, which literary device do you like? And I'm going to go with a narrative style here. I really like when the author talks to the reader directly, like, hey, reader, this is what's happening, or, you know, addresses the reader. I don't see this too often, but I think it's a very cool device and one that in my own writing I want to eventually employ. And off the top of my head, I'm thinking of The True Confessions of Charlotte Doyle, which is a middle grade book that is one of my favorite books of all time. The prologue is a letter directly addressed to the reader, and I thought that was really cool. So I think it's a really neat literary device or writing style choice. And then comes, what is the literary device that you dislike the most? And for me, it would be the overuse of figurative language, specifically metaphors and similes, and then more specifically extended metaphors. I have read books where entire pages are dedicated to an extended metaphor, and I really get pulled from the story when that happens. And that's another reason that Nevernight by Jay Kristoff is a very intimidating book for me, because I hear that he uses a lot of metaphors in his writing, and some of them are just downright bizarre. So I'm really hoping that it complements or adds to the story and doesn't take away, because I'm going to be really disappointed if the overuse of figurative language just is not for me with his writing or any author's writing. Question 10 is, which character archetypes do you enjoy the most? And I'm going to go with the mentor slash teacher. And I feel like this has changed in the last couple of years. And I think it has to do with the fact that I'm getting older and wiser. And I'm also a teacher to middle schoolers. So I deal with, 13 and 14-year-olds all day. And I kind of have to be that mentor slash teacher. And I really respect those type of characters. So some great literary mentors that I can think of would be Gandalf from the Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings trilogy, also Brom from Aragon, as well as Chade from the Farseer trilogy by Robin Hobb. He's definitely one of my favorite mentors. So that's really an archetype that I get a lot of joy reading about. Question 11 is your favorite setting in a book, and I have a real place in my heart for like snowy mountains, and I think that's because I grew up in Florida near the beach, and Florida is a completely flat state and there's no seasons except for rain and no rain, and I really enjoy mountains and snow-capped peaks and valleys. It's just not something I grew up with, so whenever I have to read about that, I really enjoy it. The Seven Realms series by Cinda Williams Chima has that type of setting, and I found that I absolutely loved being immersed in that. And question 12 is your favorite romantic trope. I don't read a lot of romance to really have a favorite trope, but I'm kind of going to go with where not haters to lovers, but where you just don't like each other to liking each other. Or if you have two people that just seem like they would not have anything in common and just wouldn't fit together, and then get stuck someplace and have to learn about each other and realize they have more in common than they think and develop a relationship. I think that that's a very realistic trope and one that I enjoy enough reading about. All right, you guys, so that is it for the info dump book tag. I hope you enjoyed this tag and learning a little bit more about what I like in the books that I read. If you are not already subscribed to my channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button, as well as the little bell icon, so you can be notified every time I post new content. I post new videos every Sunday, and sometimes I post bonus videos in the middle of the week. And I will see you guys soon with another one. Goodbye. Thank you.